Will Africa ever move beyond being 54 separate countries to become a united force with one voice? It's a dream many have held onto for decades, but it still feels far away. When Burkina Faso's president, Ibrahim Traoré, faced threats of being overthrown, where were Africa's leaders? Most remained silent, but unexpectedly, support came not from another president, but from a king. Morocco's king stepped up. A man known for tradition and diplomacy became a symbol of African unity. While others said nothing, the Moroccan king took action. He didn't just offer kind words, he sent a strong message of support and a powerful gesture of unity. His move surprised many across the continent. At a time when Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are being pushed aside by Western nations and even some fellow African countries, Morocco opened its Atlantic ports, trade paths, and military ties to them. It was a smart and bold move that changed everything. This wasn't just about politics. It was a sign that unity in Africa might still be possible. Because when one African country is isolated, another can choose to stand with it. We might not have to wait long for African unity. The first steps could already be happening, led by those who choose courage over silence and brotherhood over borders. The Moroccan king may have just planted one of those early seeds of unity. It's no longer a question of if Africa will unite, but when. As Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger work to break free from outside control and rebuild from years of instability, many nearby African nations have turned their backs. Countries like Nigeria, Ivory Coast, and Ghana's previous government have done little to help and, in some cases, have made things worse. Instead of standing together, some have sided with foreign forces. This has made it even harder for the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, to secure their lands and fight threats. Two clear examples of this betrayal are Benin and Ivory Coast. By letting France use their land, they've helped set up operations meant to weaken the AES as it seeks freedom from foreign interference. This isn't just a theory. Many believe the failed coup attempt in Burkina Faso on April 16th was backed by foreign powers, with help coming from across the Ivorian border. These tensions aren't just local, they reflect a bigger global struggle. It's about where loyalties lie, with the past and its colonial influence, or with a future built on African independence. In this rising conflict, one North African country, Morocco, has made a clear choice. Instead of isolating its neighbors, it has taken real steps to support them. The Kingdom of Morocco didn't just express its support for the struggling countries of the Sahel. It went much further. For landlocked nations like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, access to the sea is crucial for their survival and economy. In the past, they relied on the ports of Ivory Coast, Benin, and Senegal to get goods in and out. But over time, these ports have become less reliable and sometimes even hostile. The breaking point came last year when Benin took control of Niger's oil exports at its ports. However, Morocco has now taken a bold step by offering the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, access to its own Atlantic ports. This move was announced in Rabat during an important meeting with the foreign ministers of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. The atmosphere of the meeting was one of serious diplomacy and genuine solidarity. In a clear statement of support, Morocco has given the AES the ability to connect to global markets directly. This is a game-changer. For the first time, these landlocked countries have a reliable and friendly trade route to the world. Burkina Faso's foreign minister, Karamoko Jean-Marie Traoré, praised Morocco's actions, saying they showed the king's deep care for Africa and its people. Morocco's actions remind us that the future of Africa depends on countries supporting each other, especially during tough times. This is proof that unity is possible. Morocco's support wasn't just practical, it was also personal. Burkina Faso's foreign minister, Traoré, expressed how moved he was by King Mohammed VI's understanding of the Sahel's crisis. The king's actions reflected a genuine desire to build strong, equal relationships, not based on power or control, but on cooperation and respect. Mali's foreign minister, Abdoulaye Diop, also expressed his thanks, calling Morocco's support a true commitment to African unity. He sees the access to Moroccan ports as a revolutionary step that could finally end the isolation that has long held the Sahel back. But even more important to Diop was Morocco's approach to political change. While some neighboring countries and organizations like ECOWAS are pressuring the AES to quickly return to civilian rule, Morocco has taken a different path. Instead of pushing for rapid change, it's focused on respect, dialogue, and patience. Morocco has become not just a partner, but a symbol of how African diplomacy can work without foreign interference. It stands for sovereignty, mutual respect, and shared growth. The fact that this Moroccan initiative took time to build is not widely known. It was first announced in November 2023, long before the recent political turmoil and coup attempts. This recent Rabat summit was not a fresh idea, but rather a reaffirmation of a promise made by King Mohammed VI. As long as the AES nations constructed the required local infrastructure to link to Morocco's pre-existing communication and transportation networks, the king at the time declared that Morocco was ready to open its port, rail, and road systems to the Sahel nations. It was a bold plan that required sustained commitment, cooperation, and foresight. The intent behind this gesture has always been clear. Morocco's administration has consistently shown that it has the Sahel in mind, according to Moroccan and Mali officials. The king has taken significant steps, such as waiving customs taxes on their exports and canceling their debts, in addition to providing ports to AES nations, he told Foreign Minister Nasser Bourita. But this poses a crucial question. Why is Morocco acting in this way while so many others have chosen to remain silent or to oppose? The solution lies in a simple yet important fact. Insecurity in the Sahel is not a local problem. Since the toppling of Muammar Gaddafi, the region has been engulfed in violence and turmoil. Morocco understands that if this instability is not contained, it might spread across the continent. Furthermore, unlike those who wait for external forces to act, Morocco is acting as a neighbor, partner, and fellow African nation committed to stability and unity. One might ask how access to seaports could reduce insecurity in the Sahelian region. It's a valid question, but it also shows how little is understood about the root reasons of this problem. According to Moroccan Foreign Minister Nasser Bourita, King Mohammed VI has a viewpoint that differs greatly from the dominant Western narrative. Unlike the United States, France, and much of the international community, which have focused only on military operations and counterterrorism activities, Morocco has taken a different approach, one that tackles the underlying problem rather than just the symptoms. The king believes that development is the best strategy to fight instability. Where others see guns and soldiers as the answer, Morocco sees economic opportunity, trade, and infrastructure. And the reasoning is undeniable. For what reasons do terrorist groups thrive in the Sahel? Because they prey on the neglected, on underdeveloped and deserted towns where the promise of food, money, or even just survival is enough to draw people in. These extremist groups infiltrate neighborhoods that have been destroyed and instill false optimism in the most vulnerable segments of society. Children, some as young as 7, are raised to become child soldiers. They are not naturally hateful. From birth, they are ravenous. But what if there were roads, clinics, schools, and jobs in the same towns? What if families had a chance? That world would not be conducive to the growth of extremism. And this is the future that the King of Morocco envisions. A future where development acts as a safeguard for the Sahel against both dread and despair. Morocco's bold desire has a deeper motivation than geopolitics, history, or principle. The Sahelian countries and Morocco have a long history of standing together and assisting one another. According to Foreign Minister Nasser Bourita, King Mohammed VI has always cherished these connections and promoted them both verbally and physically. The current royal undertaking is not an isolated act of goodwill. For many years, the king has personally pledged to help the Sahel nations in times of need. This is the perfect illustration of African unity. Collaboration, camaraderie, and unwavering support, not competition or criticism. When one nation falters, other nations should help it instead of giving up. Perhaps the most heartening is the king's unwavering belief in the promise of the Sahel. The king sees opportunities where others see obstacles, according to Bourita. This kind of thought is desperately needed in Africa. Unlike other leaders who view the region through the lens of crises and instability, King Mohammed envisions a future of growth, transformation, and shared prosperity. He is against quick fixes and weak solutions. He argues that making real investments in development is the only practical solution. It contrasts sharply with the silence of many African countries, especially when it comes to the AES, because most of the continent's so-called democracies have not shown the same dedication to African integration as the military-led alliance of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. They have boldly defended their independence, fought foreign rule, and dared to hope for a future that is African-made, African for African. The July 2023 coup in Niger and the possibility of military involvement against ECO marked a turning point in African geopolitics. Mali and Burkina Faso joined forces under their own military leadership to protect their Sahelian neighbor. The effect of this act of unity was increased by the fact that these three nations had not yet formed a formal alliance. Each leader continued to negotiate the inherent complexities of their transitions. But in the face of a common danger, they took decisive action. Their position was clear. An attack on Niger would be considered an act of war against all three. The contemporary AES bloc togetherness, a brotherhood formed in times of adversity rather than comfort, was founded on that one sentence. This spirit of brotherhood has only grown stronger over time. Following Ukraine's shocking admission that it was collaborating with terrorists to attack Mali's forces, the governments of Niger and Burkina Faso responded quickly. They expelled Ukrainian ambassadors and publicly blasted the action right away. However, as the world watched, the Western nations remained silent. No condemnation, no accountability, just silence. This blatant double standard simply served to strengthen the devotion of the AES coalition. In stark contrast to the fragmented and foreign-influenced leadership of ECOWAS, the unity inside the AES is based on respect for one another, a common struggle, and a refusal to be controlled by outside powers. While some just focus on exerting pressure on these countries to return to civilian rule, the AES has prioritized sovereignty, security, and genuine African-led solutions. They rejected ECOWAS military threats, especially those plans backed by Nigerian President Tinubu, for reasons other than politics. It represented the autonomy, dignity, and right to self-determination of Africans. But threats were insufficient for ECOWAS. It imposed severe economic sanctions on Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, sanctions that seriously harmed their already fragile economies. In Niger, the effects were immediate and catastrophic. Nigeria shut down trade and electricity, depriving hospitals of electricity medicine, and basic supplies. It was not conflict that claimed hundreds of lives, but policy. ECOWAS justified this by citing democracy. But if democracy is truly about the will of the people, what do we do when the people support the very military regimes that ECOWAS is trying to topple? These coups were not forced onto the populace. In some regions, they were welcomed and even glorified. Instead of understanding this more complicated reality, ECOWAS chose to imitate the Western response: separate, discipline, and apply pressure. What is even more confusing about this is the obvious hypocrisy. The bloc ignored the coup in Chad, even though it professed to uphold democratic values. Why weren't the same fines applied? Why is a double standard in place? It goes without saying that the issue is not just one of democracy, but also of which countries back Western interests. Moreover, the African Union has not shown itself to be a better leader. When Mali first encountered instability, the AU was not present. Instead of trying to understand the root causes of the problem or reaching out to Malian officials, the response came too late. After being left to handle the crisis on its own, Mali had no choice but to call in French troops. Unfortunately, this move caused more harm than good. Years later, the promises of international aid have faded. The region remains unstable, and the violence has only worsened. In contrast, Morocco's approach, which focuses on offering real support, solidarity, and opportunities, provides a clear example of what true African unity could look like. The truth is simple. For Africa to truly prosper, remain stable, and achieve independence, it must unite. This was the vision of Africa's founding leaders. Instead of 54 separate nations each working on its own, there could be a united community working together. What if African countries combined their military strength, resources, and intelligence to combat the insurgency in the Sahel? The result would likely be very different from what we see today. But too many countries choose silence, either watching from afar or waiting for Western powers whose interests often don't align with those of the region. How can we say African problems need African solutions, yet African countries still try to solve their issues on their own? This is where Morocco's actions go beyond simple diplomacy. It's a model for what Africa could achieve. While others chose to isolate or ignore the problem, Morocco chose to step in with support and guidance. The Moroccan government didn't just sympathize with the AES nations. It took the time to understand the situation and identify its core issues. Instead of simply offering words of encouragement, Morocco granted Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso access to its Atlantic ports, opening up new opportunities for trade, economic growth, and independence. These ports could drastically lower trade costs and unlock economic potential that had been restricted for years by poor access to global markets. Morocco's actions are a rare and meaningful example of true solidarity in a continent where support is often just talk. With this approach of cooperation, action, and unity, Africa can move forward. Morocco should be praised for this remarkable effort. If more African nations followed Morocco's example, choosing collaboration over isolation, the vision of a new Africa, one that is strong, fearless, and responsible for its own future, could become a reality much sooner. What do you think? Is Africa finally changing its direction? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to see more content like this, make sure to hit the bell icon and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.